We're all sinners, right? Some people sin, you can see it more. That shouldn't be a reason why I should judge you more, right? What I'm just saying to you is I can't break what God has told me. Because I know the difference between right and wrong. That's all I'm saying.
But I don't believe in God, and I know the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah, but that's not to say that you're not struggling for something. So I'm just saying, I don't want to come across as I'm being rude to you. That's not my intention.
I'm struggling between the fact that it would be more beneficial to myself to not go out and feed homeless people, but me and my girlfriend spend our excess income on going out and doing that.
That's a lovely thing to do, and thank you for doing that. Oh, glory to God.
But that's not a decision we make based on God. It's a decision that we make based on the fact that it's the right thing to do. And she didn't grow up with any religion. She was completely, I don't want to say agnostic because it's not the right word for it. I can't remember what she told me.
I didn't know that.
Well, because we've had long conversations about it, but
brother, the reason why you're doing good is because you have the commandments on your heart.
Like an ex-boyfriend too.
Well,
sorry?
the only reason people do good is because God puts His love in their hearts.
God is good. Yes, the commandments is written on our hearts. Like earlier you said, you don't want to do that, you said, right? Because it's not in your nature. You said that, to do bad. But then I said, 1 minute, man's nature is flawed because we can see that there's things that you do want to do, right? That is
the commandments on their heart.
The fact that you're met in God's image, you should be good.
Well, no, that's not actually true because I would very much like
So-
to buy myself a new gaming PC to use in my home, but I don't do that because I know it's not the right thing to do, and that's not based on God's will.
You're so cooked, you should do that.
How can atheists deceive you? Okay, so atheists are deceiving their audiences that atheism is like a rational or a tenable position to take. And I feel bad because when these big time atheist influencers, they'll get their audience they lie to their audience, and then their audience will come on my panel and get obliterated in a debate because atheism is a joke. And I feel bad for them. They're being lied to. No one's telling them the truth that, look, if atheism is true, then we couldn't even do science. So your atheist position undermines the science that you love so much. And, and what's sad is these big atheist influencers, they go on their own lives and they're like, oh, yeah, God doesn't exist. Let's just laugh at Christians. Ha, 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 ha. Where are they? Why don't they come up here and well, I'm wrong, apparently? Well, come here and tell me I'm wrong, Mr. Atheist Influencer. They won't do that, though, because they get murdered or smurdered in a debate. And metaphorically, like in a debate, right?
Brother, are you tapping your own live?
Yeah.
That's pretty sad. Why
is that sad?
Why is that sad? Because you have to feel like you need to be heard so badly, you'll sit here and tap on a phone.
You literally joined my panel so people could hear you.
I'm just saying, it's sad that you think you need recognition so badly.
Is it sad that you came on my panel because you need to be heard so bad and you need recognition? Are you a sad person too?
Probably at times I have been. Right now I feel all right. Maybe pathetic is the better word.
Yeah, you don't really think about the things you say, do you?
Well, what do you want to talk about, brother?
I want to talk about how atheism is like really dumb and no one should be an atheist.
Well, you said that atheism teaches bigotry. Like, there's not a commonality between atheists like there is between Christians. The Bible teaches bigotry.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does. Do you support LGBTQ marriage?
Marriage? I don't support it, but I'm not against it.
Right. It's because you're bigoted toward LGBTQ.
I'm not bigoted towards LGBTQ.
You literally are. It's fine.
Why? Because I don't support. Why do I have to support them?
It's because you don't support them that you're bigoted. It's because you.
No, bigoted means
limitation of rights.
Apparently, you don't know what words mean. So a bigot is someone who's intolerant, right?
You're not tolerant of LGBTQ marriage.
No, but not supporting something doesn't mean you're intolerant.
Do you tolerate LGBTQ marriage? Are you going to allow it? Would
Yeah,
you?
sure, they can get
You
married.
don't understand the Bible. It's fine.
What?
You don't understand the Bible. The Bible does not. It says that they should be unalived with stones.
But if they're not Christian, they don't have to listen to the Bible. The Bible doesn't apply to
It
people
doesn't
that.
say only Christian, only people that are Christian. It doesn't say that.
Why if you're not a Christian, you don't have to do anything the Bible says. The Bible doesn't apply to you if you're not
It's just
Christian.
not the way it is because Christians are part of what makes rules, but society is what makes rules.
Okay.
So what you're saying is not accurate. There's societal rules that we have to follow, and I've found that Christians have had a huge influence in making those rules.
Dude, if you're not a Christian, you don't have to follow any Christian rules. It's only for Christians. So
Literally
there's no I don't see what the
societal
issue.
law.
What is the issue with Christians following
Do you
Christian?
know they had to make LGBTQ marriage legal?
What?
Did you know they had to make LGBTQ marriage legal like 15 years ago?
Who cares, dude? It's not a big
He's
deal.
so small, man.
What?
He's so small. Why are you trying to rage bait people?
I'm not trying to rage bait.
That's all you do every
I'm trying
time
to
I
help.
come on
I'm
here.
trying to help. Atheists are being lied to.
You're not helping anyone with anything.
I'm trying to help atheists because they're being lied to by atheist influencers on TikTok.
I was a Christian until I went to Iraq. I felt
Yeah,
like I was being lied to too.
Their tiny atheist brain, it's
That's
like
rage baiting.
they don't even know that they're being
Are you
deceived.
saying you're smarter than every single atheist?
What?
Would you say you're smarter than every single atheist?
No.
Well, then why are you going to sit here and say a small atheist brain when you don't even think you're smarter than every single atheist?
Because there's a lot of really
Because you're just trying to rage bait and you're not really thinking about what you're saying?
no, there's just a lot of low information people who
You're
are
low, bro.
easily manipulated by
You're easily manipulated, bro.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So God is everything. If you really understood God, you'd know that God is not a separation. You can't not be of God. God is not a he or him. God is the culmination of all things evolving and experiencing itself simultaneously. Not a separation. Not like a person. No genitalia. No mind.
If God and we disagree, then how does that work? How is God contradicting himself?
God's not a he. So you're coming at it from an inappropriate mental space because you're already trying to fill in this checkbox that's inappropriate, but in your mind it's already checked. Like God is how you think it is. Check. Now how does that work, atheist?
Not how I think God is, right? God self-identified as a he, so you don't want to respect
The
God's.
Bible is the claim, not the evidence. Duh.
No, the Bible is
The
both.
Bible, dude, have you read every religious text? You have.
I want to know why God wants to be his pronouns are he him, right?
God's everything.
But he revealed that his pronouns are he him. So why don't
Men of the Bible.
you respect when someone asks you like I want to be called these pronouns? Do you respect that person?
I will call them the pronouns they want.
Okay, but apparently when God does that, you don't respect God.
Men of the Bible wrote that. No, because that's not a person. God's not a person.
No, God is a person. If God's not a person, how would you even know anything about God?
I just told you, man.
So let me ask you a question.
You're so lost.
Let me ask you a question. Could God be known if God purposed the world not know him?
God is not a him. It's like you just can't understand how to erase your conditioning
Erase my. God asked to be called.
your conditioning.
I respect God's pronouns, and when people want to be called pronouns, I'll try to call them. Sometimes I make
I
mistakes.
respect a person's pronouns, but God is not.
It doesn't seem like you do, and I'm gonna have to remove you. Look, I want people that respect pronouns on my panel. You are not respecting God's pronouns, so I'm going to have to.
God does not have pronouns.
In the future, if you want to respect people's pronouns, you can come back up on. Okay.
What's up, Mars? Man, you're weak.
Okay. Well, I think we should respect people's pronouns when they want to be called. You seem to disagree. Well, we don't want bigots here. We love everyone here, even anyone, no matter, even if they did a horrible crime, we will still show people love. Okay. Jesus isn't a Trump supporter. True. But Trump's gonna get rid of. Trump's gonna provide a lot of content. Trump's hilarious, and Trump's gonna end the left wing censorship cartel on the internet, and that I really like, because this online censorship is ridiculous. We need freedoms of speech. If we want a free country, we need freedoms of speech. They don't want us to have freedom. Welcome.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. All right, so you're a believer in the Bible, correct?
Yeah, I'm a Christian. Yeah, Bible's 100. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, all right, good. So what are you using the platform for, to be able to argue the point, or be able to show people that Jesus is king?
Yeah, like I'm good at debating, and I can prove that the Bible's true, and I also like want to entertain and make people laugh.
Okay. You can entertain me if you want to. And so I'm a believer as well. I'm a Christian, and maybe this give you some encouragement, maybe to give me some before the start of the day, and until somebody else pops up in the chat or something like that. What's your thoughts on the Nephilim?
Uh, I was more interested in that, I guess, when I was like a conspiracy theorist. I was hardcore. So I used to believe in all kinds of like weird stuff, like ancient aliens. I don't believe in that anymore.
Yeah.
But now, I guess I would say like it seems like there's an idea what they're like when the fallen angels came and had daughters with human women, or had children with human women, that was the Nephilim. There's that theory. I don't know. I haven't done a lot of research into it or anything, though.
Well, I've done a little bit into it. So I saw a Michael Heisner video where he said that the sons of God, that the Nephilim is referred to in Genesis 3, right before the flood. It said that God looked over all of the world, and he saw none good, no, not one, except for Noah and his family. And then it talks about the giants, the Nephilim, and then it refers to them as the sons of God. And they were giants, is what it says. So those are just, that's what you've got going on. So I always looked at that passage and I'm like, is this like, what is this? Is this like fallen angels or whatever? That we're actually sleeping with women on earth, and that's why God had to destroy it and stuff like that. And that was Michael Heisner, what he was saying, and he was a theologian, scholar, professor, all that good stuff. And so I dug into it, and sons of God is all lowercase on everything. And then it says, I had to actually research to find out if there was anything going on in that nature. And my conclusion is that Michael Heisner is wrong. They were giant people. I don't discard that because it says it inside of the Bible. But also I don't believe that they were fallen angels, because it says that there's only one God, and God, inside of the Bible, he says, I've looked all around and there's no God, no, not one. I am the first, I am the last. So it actually broke down my faith a little bit, because I was like, is there other people upstairs in heaven that there are other gods that maybe he counsels with, like in the book of Job in the early beginning. And it was kind of scary, because I was like, okay, there's an idea that there's multiple gods that are up there, just one that's greater than all the rest of them. But the Bible, it says it in a few different places. It says that he's the first, the last, and the only. So there is no other gods. And then
they use that word. They use that word to like refer to themselves. I don't know what exact. There's like a lowercase g, uppercase g.
Yeah.
It's like referring to something different, right?
Yeah. The sons of God, that reference, when I looked it up to find out what it was and cross-referenced it inside of the Bible, it says anybody who follows God, at the time, this was Old Testament, so pre-Jesus, anybody who followed God at the time were called the sons of God. So
Yeah,
that's where it
Jesus.
gets a little bit.
They were gonna stone Jesus for blasphemy of saying he was the Son of God, and then he brought that up, and that, well, doesn't the Torah say that we're all sons of God? That's how he avoided being stoned.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy how there's things in the Bible that we just don't understand sometimes?
Yeah, I usually when I study the Bible, I go to like Bible stuff, especially like Old Testament. It's like you can't really understand what you're reading if you don't know the context of it, what was going on at that time, what people were like. You need a lot of context to understand the story.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any stories that kind of stumped you that you want to talk about?
Not really. I mainly like just focused on how God's love and what does that mean to like love others, and I don't know. That's stuff. That's the type of stuff I think about a lot. I don't just Nephilim or like I don't really think about the afterlife too much. Or I mean, life is kind of mysterious. So I know there's like I know demons exist, and that's kind of weird. And like, are those the Nephilim, like disembodied minds that's roaming the planet? I don't know. Weird stuff. Life is weird.
Yeah, yeah,
It's hard to say
definitely.
though. It's hard to say like what the Nephilim are because it's not really explicit. It's not really like explicit. And I don't know. There's things in the Bible that aren't super clear, and I just don't really worry about it. I don't think about it too much.
Yeah. So, what is your defense against the person that comes up and says, if God is an all loving God, then, why do we see him, um, all these people dying, even Noah, like the entire earth? What's your defense on that?
Well, one thing I would say is that like um, they got to remember that in the story, God originally made everything perfect, and then we chose to rebel, and we failed to listen to God, or something happened. There's a fall, and as a result of the fall, there's like a temporal sort of discipline or judgment where God temporarily will allow bad things to happen, and I'd say I think he does this so we learn not to love the world, and that we turn toward God and love God instead of loving the world.
Yes. And you believe that that God is the author of life, that He has that right to take away life because
Well,
He's the only
well,
one that can give it, but we can't because we can't give life.
yeah, from our perspective, it seems bad when like a child or something gets a disease and unalives, and of course that seems awful from our perspective. But we have to realize that the world isn't for us. The universe, God designed the universe for Him. It's not for us. And from God's perspective, being unalived isn't like the end. There's an afterlife, and with that,
It's just a change in location.
yeah, it's like a doorway to somewhere else. So it's from his perspective, it's not the bad thing it is from our perspective because we have this like fear of the unknown. We don't know what happens when we die, and so it seems really bad to us. But if it's the case that you unalive, you're born into eternal life in paradise, it's not such a bad thing, is it? So
No, definitely not. And if do you have a wife, anything like that, kids?
no, I just have a cat.
Okay, all right. Okay, you have a cat that can work as an example. Um, if you saw somebody kick that cat, what would you do?
It's hard to say, but I know I wouldn't be very happy, that's for sure. I would
Oh,
protect my cat, I suppose, for sure.
yeah, okay. All right, so the same principle. If you love something deep enough, then you're willing to protect that thing, okay? If somebody was to kick, let's just say my cat, somebody was to kick it, and they were to harm it, I would have to get involved and I would have to stop it from happening. Um, so I would have to bring judgment on something if I love something else. So our loving God, when it comes to the Israelites and the Canaanites, why did he wipe out all these people? If you love people, you have to be able to judge other people and stop them from being an aggressor towards the people that you love or the things that you love. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't mind just like biting the bullet because the way I see it, our sense of like what's good and evil is radically different than like what God's will is, and we can only know good when God reveals what the good is to us because we're kind of, and so like if God does something in the Old Testament like with the Amalekites or even when he asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, that seems wrong according to like what we are like every day sort of what we think of as right and wrong. Some of these things what God does seems like wrong to us from our perspective, but like I think all that is evidence that we don't really know what's right and wrong and that only God does. So if God commands things that from our perspective seem wrong, it's like whatever. It's so what? Like we're in no position as a human being to, God is the authority. We can't, who cares if we think what he did was wrong? We're in no position to judge God. So I don't really see it as much of a problem. It's just the problem is they think they're better than God, and that they would judge evil and good better than God, pretty much. I got some
Yeah.
other guy requesting here. Do you mind if I give someone else a chance to talk?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, man. All right. Well, thanks for coming up. Appreciate you, and have a good day. God bless and all that. So.
You too, man. You too.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Guess I have to charge my battery. You still hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just a little low. I'm out here by the roadside too. Hopefully the noise doesn't blank me out.
Yeah, there's a little background, but I could try talking closer to my mic.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Anyways, want to get in here. Man was bringing up the Abraham story and basically a test of faith. Bring your son down and sacrifice him to me, so forth. And he did that kind of just straight out of faith, knowing that he had a God that he didn't have to worry about. He knew he was going to have to sacrifice his son because he has such a great God. So he just blindly went out and did exactly what God asked him to do, and that was the test.
I think a key point there is God had promised him Isaac and promised things about him. And so he knew based on what God had promised about Isaac that even if he sacrificed Isaac, God would like reincarnate him or something. That's what he believed. So yeah, he had total faith in God that like because he loved Isaac. Isaac was his favorite son, but he believed that even though he sacrificed Isaac to God, that somehow Isaac would come back.
I think the whole thing of Abraham was written down, and then of course we also have almost a counterpoint to that, where we also have Jesus written down, where God actually goes out and sacrifices his son.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Kind of blows my mind that we actually have these two stories in the Bible, and they're so almost exactly counter one another.
I think when you understand that like God's love and he's truthful and he keeps his promises and all that we can he's just, merciful, we can have faith and trust in God. We don't have to worry about whatever happens in life because we know like God's good.
Yeah, there's another point that I wanted to bring up too. Everybody goes to John 3:16, and if you read John 3:16 and then go immediately and read John 4:16, and tell me what you get from reading both of them.
First John 4:16 says, John 3:16 says, right? 4:16 says, Jesus tells a woman to go call her husband and return, but you should believe with my husband. I don't understand what you're getting.
What did you see? John 4:16 was.
Jesus tells a woman to go call her husband and return, but she replies that she has no husband.
Oh no, that's not John 4:16.
Yes, it is.
No. Which Bible are you in?
NIV. He told her, "Go call your husband and come back." That's John 4:16.
And John 4. It's chapter 4 and 16.
Yeah. He told her, "Go call your husband and come back."
How come I got the exact opposite? I mean, I got something like when God is with you and you're in Him. That basically is because of love. Where is that written?
No, you're talking about First John.
Oh, so First John what? 4:16.
Yeah, that's a different book.
Okay, so First John 4:16, and then everybody uses what is the other one? John 3:16 is out of which John?
Those are different
First
books.
John?
Those are different books.
Oh, two different books by the same guy.
I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to Bible questions, so I'd have to look that up.
Well, I had to ask. It was John or John. There might be a whole bunch of Johns, I guess.
Right, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like if there's more Johns, I don't know.
That's the confusion, right? We got going on.
I just don't have everything memorized, right? Like I don't have that good of a mind where I can just memorize things. So I have to research, take notes, look things up. I read a lot and stuff. So
yeah, the one in I guess it's First John and 4:16 would be how does that read exactly?
Okay, so this one says, "And we have known and believed the love that God hath to us. God is love, and he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him."
Dwelleth inside of us.
Yeah, so God's love, and when we make love like the most important thing in our life, basically that's why like God says, God's before me, I'm a jealous God.
So basically, what it's saying is, if you're in that love or agape love with God, and He dwells within you, then that could be the other way of being saved, also on top of just going through Jesus. So there's more than one path.
No, there's not more than one path. No, where are you getting that?
That's what it's telling you.
It's not.
Oh, so if God dwells within us, you're saying you don't go to God?
We can that relationship with God is only possible because Jesus' sacrifice, and now we have the power of the Holy Spirit. And
so we basically can have a relationship and have God inside of us, but we're not allowed into heaven.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. So God
maybe we're being barred from heaven because of the fact that somebody's saying you're not allowed to go to heaven if God's inside of you. So that doesn't make any sense.
Oh man.
So you're basically barring God from heaven, and that would mean Jesus couldn't even get into heaven because He had God inside of Him too.
So, do you accept God as your creator?
I know God is my creator. He's the creator of all things.
You're a Christian?
Yes, sir. And if you're worried about me saying Jesus, I can say Jesus all day long, but does that get you into heaven?
Well, it doesn't matter. Like, this stream isn't about like what gets you into heaven. So.
Oh, absolutely. I'm worried about people saving themselves and getting salvation. Yeah. And I'm really worried about the fact that they're being distracted by so many other things, like what God thinks in His mind, instead of actually what they have to do to be saved.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not really worried about that. So
okay, I don't have to worry about it either. I've already been saved. I thought I would just stretch out that hand and make sure everybody, gets a hand up, because that's what brothers do for one another.
All right. Well, thanks, man. But I'm looking to debate atheists, so I'm gonna move on.
Okay, God bless you, and hopefully save a couple of atheists on the way too.
God bless. I don't have any expectations of convincing an atheist. Jesus is Lord. Like, they hate Jesus, so. But it's just fun to debate. Welcome, guest.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Good.
Nice.
I was listening to you guys talking earlier, one before this last one.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of it for me is that, like you said, God created the universe, and that and so it's His to do with what He will, and we just don't understand. And that was what got me moving out. I mean, I grew up in a church that my great grandfather built, and I went there every time it was open. I mean, it was, just part of our life. My family owned that building. They hired a preacher and had a parsonage, but what got me moving away from it was when I realized that what everyone in my church believed was that, as a kid, I always believed that it wasn't that it was wrong because God said so. God said so because it was wrong. Don't kill wasn't just his personal opinion.
We can't say those words. We have to say, like, unalive and great.
Oh, sorry. But I'm just speaking in quote. But I mean, yeah.
That's
I should not do this, not because he thought it was bad, but because it was bad, and so he just gave that information. And
that's a problem. I mean, that's problematic. Yeah. That's problematic because then there'd be something outside of God that God would be submitting to in that scenario.
Right, but I mean then it's not, everybody says, like, well, you can't have objective morality without God. It's like, well, that's not objective if it's subjective to Him.
Oh, well, that's no, because God is the ultimate objective absolute. So anything like God says or thinks or whatever is going to be an objective truth. That would not be subjective.
Well, that's problematic. I mean, to me, the whole thing about, people saying, well, He created everything, and it's up to Him. We're powerless, basically. I mean, I've always said, if there was a giant monster on the outside of the town that I lived in, and it declared that if we didn't feed it, one person every year, I would spend zero time trying to figure out who that person is, and all of my time trying to figure out how to get rid of that monster. I mean, that's just my equals right is so bad. That's not a good situation to me.
This isn't like a might equals right situation. It's that, like, God is the creator. He created you. He created everything. So it's like a higher power that we all must obey.
But I mean, it just seems so.
What? What else? What is the other option? Your God?
I don't have a God.
You don't have a God. But that's crazy. There's no evidence for that.
There's no evidence. Well, yeah, there is.
There's evidence that there's no God?
Yeah.
What would that be?
Well, the fact that nothing that people associate with God works consistently.
Well, there wouldn't even be anything working consistently. How would anything be consistent if atheism is true? Because God through divine providence orders the world so that we have regularity along with irregularity. So what in atheism would dictate the regularities and irregularities in the world that we experience? What would do
physics?
That? Okay, but that's not an answer to the question, because physics are an abstraction, and abstractions can't, like, cause anything to be the case. So that's actually
You
don't know how to answer.
Yeah. So gravity is a force where two things of differing sizes attract each other. So if you're looking at it that way, if there's things that can attract each other, they'll smash into each other and make different things. So all you need is mass, and we know that energy equals mass and vice versa.
No,
So,
because
I mean, the sun turns energy into mass all the time. That's what it's doing.
yeah, but that's the thing is you can't look a law of gravity, any laws they're unchanging, something that we don't the natural world is in constant change. Molecules are flying around in motion all the time. So but laws are unchanging. So nothing in the natural world is unchanging. Everything changes in the natural world, yet laws are unchanging.
That's not necessarily true.
It
I
is true.
mean, no. So 'cause the laws are descriptive, not
Wow.
prescriptive.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I do know. I promise I know what I'm talking about. I promise.
I promise you that a law is something that doesn't change. That's what you know.
It's what we have observed over and over again happening.
And it
That's
doesn't
all a
change.
law is.
Does the law of gravity change?
Yeah, it's not universally we don't know that,
It doesn't change.
a billion miles away in another area of the universe, that doesn't work that way. We know that what we see locally does work, and that is what we call gravity.
No, there's no.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter like what scale the consistency is on. The fact that there's like a consistency on any level. The fact that gravity is unchanging from our Earth perspective, right?
No,
The law of gravity, yes, it is.
everything we take as a law or a mathematical fact or anything is just us labeling something that we saw. It's not.
You're just quibbling over words, and you're ignorant. So I don't know.
You're quibbling over words. I'm the
not
one that's
quibbling over
defining them.
words. I'm trying to
Yeah.
explain to you how atheism is like a crazy, ridiculous position with no evidence, and all the
Okay.
evidence is for Christianity.
Which evidence? One evidence. That's all.
Yeah. So if atheism were true, what evidence exactly? Because there's no evidence now. You can't have evidence in the model of reality where there is no God. It doesn't work. Okay. And this is what I'm saying. They're lying to you that acting like evidence exists while denying God. That's nuts. That's
Well, no. Who are they, and what are you? I'm not.
He
Just
says,
so we.
request if TikTok atheists are deceiving you. See, this is now I feel bad for you because you're being lied to by these like famous atheist people.
Yeah, I don't. I was talking. So I've been an atheist for 30 years before the internet. This is not the atheist.
Holy crap!
TikTok
well, they've been lying to you for okay. So is other atheists.
No one taught me that. No one.
Yeah,
that's
you've been
something I came
deceived.
to alone.
Unfortunately, you've been deceived by atheists who've convinced
How?
Because you believe that you can have evidence with independence from God. You can't have evidence without God. God's necessary for evidence.
Well, prove that, though. You're just saying that.
I'm not just saying that. I can just make arguments to prove it from like David Hume, where he'll say, David Hume, who was an atheist, empiricist, hated God, right? He'll say that if all we have is like our human reasoning and our observations of the world, we never have any evidence. We can't explain things like identity over time, cause and effect, or uniformity of nature. So only God's revelation can explain those three things, and those three things are necessary to even have evidence of anything at all foundationally. So to deny God's revelation would be to create a world where there would be no evidence.
Well,
there's no way out of it.
Those are all assertions. I mean, those you can say all those
assertions.
Things.
I appealed to David Hume's arguments. The guy made arguments.
Oh well, okay. So David Schmume. I don't care what David Hume says. I don't.
It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter your opinion, right? Because there's evidence, right? It's arguments are evidence, right?
Yeah.
I'm not just saying like, oh, here's a claim. Right? No, that was evidence. I was appealing to the evidence.
Him saying that is not evidence. All he did was just say some things and you
Oh,
repeated
you
them.
made argument. Okay, like here, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
All you have is your observations to know things, right? You're an empiricist. Okay?
Well, not just I have to see it. I can calculate it as well. I mean, it's not just if I don't see it, it didn't happen. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, that's what empiricism says, that knowledge comes from our senses.
Well, I'm saying that if I can take what I know and put that together and come out with the answer, I'm fine with that. If I know these things are true,
So
and I add those together,
you're fine with believing something on blind faith?
no, not at all.
Oh, okay. Well, then here's a problem. You enter a room, right? You look at all the objects in the room. You're observing everything. You see a microwave, okay? You leave the room. Now you're not observing any of those things. So now you don't have knowledge that like the identity of those things stays the same. So you come back in the room, I don't know, an hour later. You see the microwave. You think that it's the same microwave, but if you're going to be an honest empiricist, you never observe that's the same microwave. For all you know, someone came into the room while you were gone and replaced it with a microwave that looks the same, but it's actually a different microwave that looks the same. And you would have no way to know that. And so...
Well, you have no way to know it, but you have no way of knowing anything beyond the right now. I mean, you can say you remember, but you could also have had a concussion and forgot 30 years of your life. I mean, something could have happened. I mean, it's not... That works for anything, but I'm just saying, most probably, based on what I know and how things have always worked, I can say that's probably the same microwave. I didn't hear anybody come in the house. I didn't,
But sure, but let's pretend, and this is going to be hard for you to pretend, that we're intellectually honest. So if we're intellectually honest and we're empiricists, we really don't know that it is the same microwave. We don't even know anything in the room is the same because we never observe the identity over time. We only observe the identity in the present while we're there seeing it. And as soon as we stop observing something, we don't know that thing stays the same identity. There's no way to know. We have to assume that's true to do science. But then again, then we're believing things based on blind faith. And that's not, we can't believe things on blind faith. We have to have evidence for what
So look at this. Do you have blind faith that your car will start when you leave in the morning or in the afternoon, whenever you leave?
No, because I'm a Christian. I can justify my belief in inductive reasoning.
So what is your understanding of, is that car going to work today?
It's that would be like an inductive inference that I would be projecting that the future will resemble the past. That in the past my car started, so in the future when I start my car, it'll start. But that belief is only justified if you're a Christian, because in atheism,
why?
Because in atheism you have no reason to think that type of reasoning is accurate. Because again, this is a problem with empiricism. If we're going to be,
well, I'm not saying I'm some kind of textbook empiricist where I am following. That's an issue I run across with a lot of Christians. And like I said, I didn't become an atheist because of anybody teaching me that. I was in a small town in the South. No one taught me atheism.
There's only two ways to go. There's rationalism and empiricism. Those are the only two.
That's not true. There's not only two ways to go. It's not either Christianity or atheism. There could be. What if the Buddhists are right? We're both wrong. I mean,
in epistemology, in the history of epistemology, there's two main schools of thought where it's rationalism, which comes from Plato, and then there's empiricism, which comes from Aristotle, and then you have like various permutations that like try to make hybrid and incorporate both into a system.
Well, one doesn't work without the other. You can have a syllogism that's rational, but if it has nothing,
why are you pretending to know what you're talking about? You don't know what you're talking about.
You can't gaslight me, man. I've been this way for most of my life, and I'm older now. It's not. To me, you sound ridiculous with this. You're just being condescending. I'm
not being condescending, man. I'm trying to help you. You've been lying.
No, you are being condescending. You're saying, I know that this is going to be hard for you to pretend we're intellectually honest. That's condescending. And
'cause
you're the one that believes in space ghosts, not me. So back off of that, okay? You know, I mean,
you hate the look.
I don't hate nothing. I have no dog in that
Yes,
fight. For me,
but you're.
as an atheist, there's no villains or heroes in my
I can
story.
prove it. I can prove it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think you can rationally deny God?
I'm not denying anything. I haven't rationally seen a God yet.
Okay, right. So because you can't rationally deny God, the position of rejecting God is purely emotional.
No, I don't. I don't feel anything about it. I don't care. I mean,
Well, if your position is not based on like logic and evidence, then it's going to be an emotional position.
it is based on logic and evidence.
What's the logic that God?
Okay, so
God?
okay, look at this. If for God to be there and for there to be a heaven, I have to have a soul that can go there. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. There could be a God in heaven, and if I don't have a soul that's going to go there, who cares? So, where do we have it where a soul works? Where's the evidence that you can have a soul and that it does something and that it's?
What does this have to do with?
I'm saying there's evidence against that. There's evidence that shows that's not even possible.
Is there a scientific experiment that proves we don't have a soul?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, what
observation.
What experiment proves we don't have a soul? Can you tell me the
So
name?
since the
It's
50s,
not there.
they had people that were schizophrenic or had some kind of problem in their brain where
I just
it
need
was
the
causing.
experiments. Just tell me the experiment that proved.
Hey, I'm getting there. I'm explaining what the experiment was.
You're
Why we figured this
bullshitting.
out.
I don't care about. I just need the name.
They cut their brain in half, split brain
Okay,
syndrome.
well, thank you for coming. You're prevaricating because you hate Jesus and you hate the truth. This isn't an
You're-
intellectual issue with you. You just
It is too. It's only an intellectual issue.
Lying.
You're the one that's
Okay,
getting
well,
emotional.
you
hate.
I don't know.
There's hate.
I don't know if you're lying to me or you're lying to yourself, but you're a liar, and
Look up split brain syndrome.
I'm trying to let you know that you're a liar and that you hate the truth and that you hate Jesus. Just so you might. I guess you won't believe what I'm saying, but it's true. So.
Well, I mean that's the thing is like if you could prove to me that God exists, I'd change my mind. I believe.
Except for I did, and you ignored the evidence, and you started talking
You
about
did not. You just you quoted Hume. Who gives a crap what somebody says?
So
It doesn't matter.
I presented an argument, you ignored the evidence, and then you wanted to talk about your feelings, which is fine. You don't have to
What
be a
was my
logical
feeling?
person.
I don't.
You don't have to be
feelings.
if you don't want to be logical, it's fine. Not everyone has to be logical. If you want to be an emotional, feelings based,
Are you?
that's totally cool. You're welcome to do it. I'm just letting you know. I'm just letting you know. Okay. Well, thanks for coming.
I just want to know. Let's just be honest for a minute. Are you just trying to start a anti-atheism show here? I mean, because it sounds like all you're doing is
I'm
the same old crap. Like
I think atheism is really bad. It's poison. Yeah, atheism.
Do you know where the word atheism comes from?
Yeah, it came from when the Romans called Christians atheists because we didn't believe in their silly Roman gods.
Silly, I mean, right? And I mean,
yeah,
we have no more evidence for this Yahweh stuff than we do for their gods.
Except
at least they believe they're.
I just gave you evidence and you ignored it because.
What was the evidence? What was the evidence? Because
God is necessary. God is necessary for evidence.
You're just stating something. You're not showing me how that's true.
I did show you how it's true, but you ignored me. You just believe what you want to believe.
You just made a bunch of statements that this was true and this was true and this was true. You didn't show how.
If someone makes an argument and then you go, "Oh, that's not an argument." You're not actually responding to the argument. And if you don't respond to the argument, that's fine. But that just means you're
saying that God necessarily.
Thanks for coming. I wish you well. I wish you well. Thank you for coming. Yeah, if you don't respond to the argument, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but telling me that my argument isn't an argument when it's clearly an argument, it doesn't really do anything for you in the debate. Okay, thanks. Welcome, Kez.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, talking to the emotional atheists.
Oh, that's okay. We're all full of blood, all the same. Hey, what about the tangible things? Like just one. I'm just gonna say one thing. Explain Mount Ararat to me then.
I don't even. What do you mean? God made it.
Well, yeah. Well, he also told us exactly where the ark is. French foreign legions brought down
What are
fish.
you babbling about? What does this have to do with anything?
It proves that God is real.
Are you kidding me? No, you can't use evidentialism. You have to precept. You have to precept them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they have a bias, right? So they hate God, and they've just before they even like think about evidence, they've already decided nothing in supernatural is real. So when they evaluate and interpret evidence, they'll come up with a natural cause. You know,
How
like
can
for any phenomena, there could be like a million causes as to why the phenomenon occurred. And
this is like the book is amazing, and it's people have tried to disprove it for years.
yeah, they're crazy.
And there's evidence from like
Yeah, but
Gopherwood.
they don't care.
Gopherwood
They
is
don't care
from the
about
other.
evidence. Did you hear the
Gopherwood.
last guy? The last guy, they don't. They literally don't care about evidence. You should do emotional arguments. If you want to convince an atheist, think about like what the atheist wants. But the problem is, the atheist wants himself to be God. He doesn't want to depend upon God and admit that he needs God. He thinks he's God, and so they're very arrogant, and you have to humble them before they'll accept any evidence of God.
Wow.
They just don't want it to be true. So, or you
Well,
can try appealing to like, don't you want to see a lost loved one that's passed on, and then if you're a Christian, you can be with them in heaven, stuff like that. Because they're emotional people. Yeah, I recommend like don't ever try to do. Look, would you try to reason with a flat earther? You know, flat earthers are irrational. You can't rationalize, be rational with someone who is irrational. You have to speak to the atheist on their level. These people are not rational. I know they tell you they're rational, but I could tell you I'm Jeff Bezos. It doesn't mean I'm Jeff Bezos. Okay. They say they're rational, but they're not. They don't care about evidence. They don't care about logic and reason. They literally don't. Just tell them like what they want to hear. Like appeal to their emotions. Like, don't you want God to forgive you? Don't you want to be loved by God? You know, don't you want to? Aren't you worried about being eternally separated from God in the afterlife? Don't you want to be with God in paradise? Like appeal to their emotions, because I telling you, man, they don't care about logic and evidence. Literally, just they couldn't care less.
well, unfortunately, um, we got to act on faith because God's not controlling us. But I'll tell you one thing guaranteed is if you want the devil to be real, he will be tangible to you, but beware. That's all I can say.
That's true, man. Kind of looking for atheists. You mind if I move on? To get some debates going, or you can say something quick if you want to.
No, I'm out of here. Thank you for your time.
Okay, right on, man. God bless you. Thank
Thank you.
you. Soul farmer. Welcome, guest.
Hey, how you doing, bro?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good. I just have a question on your. I just have a question. So, blood is a payment, yes or no? Right?
And like biblically, yeah, God would demand blood.
But
As
it's considered a payment, like to atheists. I'm saying no or yes. Like for everybody, blood is a payment.
I'm not
It's a
sure what you're
it's a
talking about.
currency.
I have no idea what you're talking about. That sounds. Are you like a vampire? This sounds weird.
No. But Jesus paid with His blood, right, for our sins.
Okay. The
Correct.
debt. Yeah, he paid his debt. Jesus
With
sacrificed.
blood, the blood
Yeah,
of Jesus, right?
the blood. Yeah, drink his blood. Yeah, blood.
Yeah. It's a payment, meaning He paid for our sins already. That's all I got to say. That's all I want to say. I believe I have faith in Jesus, but I just think there's hope for everybody because it's a payment. So even if they don't believe, I think there's some kind of payment official stuff going on. When you buy something, you get something in return. But he
Yeah.
already paid without us asking. So I'm just going to leave it with that. I don't have any argument. I just have a thought.
All right. Thanks, man. Well, that's true.
All
I
right. Adios.
adios. God
Thank
bless.
you.
You're welcome.
Too.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to believe universal salvation is true and that everyone is saved because Jesus paid the debt for all of our sins. I would like that to be true. I don't know what's true, right? Like, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, the Bible says we know that God gives grace. Paul says God gives grace to whom he chooses, and he like doesn't give grace, I guess, to whom he chooses. So it's up to God's grace as to who if we're saved or not. And we just have to have faith, I guess, that God's going to make a good decision. We can't really know, and people don't like that mystery. They want to know. And I mean, I want the best for everyone, of course. So I'd like everyone to be saved, but I don't know if that's the case. Because just because I want it to be true doesn't mean it's true. So who knows? I don't know. Do more research, I guess. Oh, that guy dropped. Welcome.
Yeah,
Welcome. What you got?
yeah. So, how can you prove your God exists?
So the question implies that like proof can exist with independence of God. And so I would like challenge that. I'd like to point out that like there's it's either that like God's necessary for proof or not. And so I make the argument God's necessary for proof and I can back that up. And I would part of that I'm going to say that like proof could not exist with independence from God. So you would never you have no evidence that you can have proof without God. You just assume that. You have blind faith in that. And so I'd like to point out there's no evidence for your position. And that my position is objectively proven because things like the uniformity of nature, identity over time, causality, cause and effect, all of these things are necessary for evidence, and only God's revelation could explain or justify belief in those things. So to deny God's revelation would be to deny evidence itself, which would be impossible, and due to the impossibility of the contrary, God's revelation must be accepted as a foundation for any system of truth.
Yeah, exactly, bro. That's my point. You can't disprove a divine creator.
That's your point? Even,
Yeah, that's why you come up here and say that all these atheists, they think they know everything. They don't study hard enough.
that's true. They don't really read very much. They watch Star Trek.
Yeah.
All right,
But
man.
one day they're gonna find out soon.
Oh
All
yeah,
right, man.
it'll be demonstrated real clear at one point. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're in the last seconds. All right, brother. God bless. Thank you for having me up.
You're welcome. Yeah, non-believers, you might want to stock up on aloe vera. Maybe some sunscreen. I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna be like sun was gonna. I don't know. Sunscreen's gonna help you in that situation, but God has a special lakeside property for you in an afterlife. Name a science you've read. I don't really read science. I'm not really interested in science. I read like a sociology book. I guess that's science. I read a sociology book. Is propaganda science. I read a book about propaganda. And I read like theology books. Or I read a book on apologetics called The Objective Proof for Christianity. How can you understand us if you don't study science? What? Why do I need to study science? I'm not really interested in science. I know how to criticize science, and a lot of people believe in science and they don't know the criticisms of science. Like there's like the underdetermination of data, problem of induction, maybe like myth of the given. If educated philosopher would actually know that science doesn't actually prove anything from facts, or you don't actually get facts from science. Science is actually, like, it's actually really inept. If you're being honest, science is actually really pathetic, but people worship it because of the scientific miracles and like whatever science man says they believe in, like dogmatically. I got the Bible is a fairy tale book, people. Sure. Is that why no one can like prove it's incorrect? You can't criticize science if you don't understand it. Sure. I could. I can criticize science as a whole. I understand science as a whole, like the method, what it can be used for, and stuff. But I don't need to understand like I could understand some stuff about the philosophy of science without. I don't need to understand like scientific experiments or read science papers or peer review. That doesn't matter. I'm more talking about the philosophy of science. Yeah, well, you believe in something you don't understand because you probably don't even know. Do you know that like science relies on inductive reasoning, and inductive reasoning can't be proven? There's no scientific evidence or rational evidence that proves inductive reasoning is accurate. It's called the problem of induction. It's a big problem because if we can't justify our inductive reasoning, then science is impossible. Host doesn't believe in science as he spouts nonsense into the phone/internet developed by God. Oh, this is funny. I like you guys like want to talk crap in the chat. Why don't you come up here? You know you can all come up here and debate me and show me how stupid I am. I'm not censoring anyone. I had a paper Darth sent me on slavery I wanted to read. I could read that. Slaves in Biblical Narrative and in Translation, Peter J. Williams. Everyone with even a slight familiarity with the book of Exodus has heard that it tells of how the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt. Anyone more acquainted with the book may also be aware that it contains legal provisions discussing slavery. This article seeks to consider the term slave within translations of the Old Testament, paying particular attention to the book of Exodus and to some comparatively recent trends in biblical translation. My cat's going crazy. This and many... I gotta expand this. This is in many ways a study of semantics and lexiography. My first serious encounter with these disciplines was while working for the Semantics of Ancient Hebrew Database project under the supervision of Professor Davies. Okay, so changes in Bible translation. Okay, since the translation of the King James Version, whose 400th anniversary coincides with the publication of this festschrift is a book, a bunch of people. A festschrift, okay, is like when we want to honor someone, like an academic. A bunch of other like of his peers will come together and write chapters in a book in honor of a person who's like, a lot of times they've passed away or something. So a festschrift. This is what this is. Comes from that type of book. So anyway, since the translation of the King James, there has been a remarkable increase in the use of the term slave in Bible translations. In the KJV, the term slave only occurs once in the whole Old Testament, namely in the exclamation, "Is Israel a Suriant? Is he a homeborn Slau?" I can't pronounce these. That's Jeremiah 2:14. And there's a footnote here. It says, the word slave occurs 6 times in... Wait, what? What is it saying? In the KJV, the term slave only occurs once in the whole Old Testament. Oh. It occurs a further 6 times in the KJV. Bond slave of a female. He lists where it occurs. By far the most common term in the KJV was servant, but the translation also has a number of expressions, now archaic, for males and females in service. Compounds with bond included man, men, woman, servant, and maid. The KJV also had manservant, men servants, maid servant, handmaid, and handmaidens. Statistical searches for this article have been mainly performed using Bible works. Okay. Here, slave is not used to represent some Hebrew word or something, but it is in small print in the Edeo Princeps, later to be replaced by italics, indicating that it does not represent a specific Hebrew word at all. Rather, the word complements homeborn, which is used to render some Hebrew word. Slave has occurred because of a synonym was required for the second clause, which was in parallelism for the first. The word servant has already been used, so another term, one not particularly common in English at the time of the KJV, had to be pressed into service. Okay, I'm going to ChatGPT this since it's using like Hebrew words. I suppose ChatGPT can understand Hebrew. Or can it? I don't know. I think it can, right? Well, I guess I can ask it. Can you understand Hebrew? He can understand to some extent. Nice. Okay. Explain this to me like I'm a layman. Because I can't speak Hebrew. I am lost in the sauce. I could put the footnote in here too, I guess. Jeremiah 2. Bible is 100. You people are mouth-breathing rubes. Mouth-breathing rubes. That's a good one. What is a rube? Is it like a noob? No, I'll Google it. What is a roux? Oh, a country bumpkin. That's another good one. Country bumpkin. Conversation. Oh, I'm reading a book or a paper, or it's like a chapter in a book. Because we're learning about biblical slavery because the atheists are lying to you guys about biblical slavery. So I'm trying to help the atheists not be lied to. Okay. So this is what we got. This passage is explaining how the term slave was used very differently in older Bible translations, like the King James Version, compared to modern translations. Here's a breakdown of what it means. Okay, so 1, slave was rarely used in the KJV. When the KJV was translated 400 years ago, the word slave was not common in it. In the whole Old Testament of the KJV, slave only appears once in Jeremiah 2:14, where it says, "Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave?" Here, slave isn't even directly translating a specific Hebrew word for slave. It's more of an interpretation to fit the sentence. 2, more common term was servant. In the KJV, servant was the term used most often, even when the original Hebrew could imply something like slavery. This choice of servant reflects the language and cultural views at that time, where servant was a broader term that could include different types of service or servitude. 3, other terms for servants. The KJV also used other, now archaic words to describe people in servitude. These include bondservant or bondslave. These terms indicated a servant bound to service, similar to indentured servitude, and also maidservant and handmaid, used to describe female servants. 4, why slave shows up in certain places. In the example from Jeremiah 2:14, slave was used to complement the phrase homeborn, which means born in the household. Because the word servant had already been used, translators chose slave to give variation in the wording. So slave here isn't an exact translation, but was chosen for literary effect. 5, modern translations and changes in usage. Over time, modern translations started using slave more frequently to more accurately reflect the meaning of certain Hebrew and Greek terms that implied a more forced or lifelong servitude, closer to slavery as we understand it today. In summary, the KJV mostly used servant instead of slave because of language and culture of the time. It only used slave in a few places, often more for stylistic reasons than strict translation. In contrast, modern translation use slave more often to convey the original text meaning more directly. Is that what it was saying here? The revised version of 1885 retained this reference to slave in Jeremiah 2:14 and added 2 further references in Deuteronomy 21:14 and 24:7. And we have a footnote. I'm just gonna chat GPT all this because this is like super academic stuff with Hebrew words that I'm ignorant and I'm a big dummy. Although hopefully I don't know if ChatGPT is interpreting this correctly. Explain this to me okay, so then we have in the following review, we only consider the Old Testament section of translations. At the same time, translations with Apocrypha or New Testament show increased tendencies to use the word slave, but these tendencies will not be analyzed here. Likewise, outside the remit of this article is the movement of the word slave to first definition in Hebrew dictionaries to such an extent that the DCH, some Hebrew word, gives slave, servant, and slave as its first two of 9 definitions, even though the bulk of the entry deals with other sorts of occurrences which are more numerous. Huh. Well, hopefully ChatGPT can help me understand this. Save us, ChatGPT. You're our only hope to understand what words mean. Okay, so again, neither of these references represent the Hebrew word. Whatever that word is. Bible is stolen from other religions. Oh no. Stolen? Like you steal from my worldview when you write that sentence? Oops. Yeah. We're going over that right now. See, you've been lied to by atheist TikTok influencers. I'm here to bring people the truth. The Bible really doesn't support slavery. And we're going over that right now. Okay, Hebrew word. In fact, both are texts that talk specifically about selling people and have in common that they are the only texts that contain the verb, some Hebrew verb, which in the RV, Revised Version, understands as to deal with someone as a slave. The American Standard Version of 1901, followed by the RV, in having only these 3 occurrences of the word slave. Okay, now we're gonna plug this into ChatGPT and have it help it understand these words. This word salad. Stop, please. I'm losing brain cells. You can also join and debate me. Prove atheism. Atheism is true because... Oh, God, I don't like God. He's a jerk. So, because truth is based on what I like or don't like, and I don't like God, therefore, God does not exist. This passage is discussing how the word slave appeared in the Revised Version of the Bible in 1885 and then in the American Standard Version in 1901, focusing only on the Old Testament. Here's a breakdown in simpler terms. So the RV kept slave in a few places. In 1885, the Revised Version kept the term slave in one verse from the King James Version, Jeremiah 2:14, and added it in 2 new places, Deuteronomy 21:14 and 24:7. 2. Use of slave increasing in some translations. In other parts of the Bible, like the Apocrypha or New Testament, the use of the term slave was becoming more common in translations, but this article only focuses on how it was used in the Old Testament. 3. Shift in Hebrew dictionaries. Over time, Hebrew dictionaries started listing slave as one of the main meanings of the Hebrew word, often translated as servant in older Bibles. This shift reflects a change in understanding of certain Hebrew words, showing a tendency to recognize meanings closer to slavery. 4. Different Hebrew words and meanings. Importantly, the passages where slave is used don't necessarily represent the exact Hebrew word for slave. Instead, these verses talk about selling people, which can imply a kind of forced servitude. For instance, in these verses, there's a verb meaning to deal with someone as a slave. 5. American Standard Version followed the RV's usage. When the American Standard Version came out in 1901, it followed the RV by using slave in only these 3 places, Jeremiah, Deuteronomy. So the term slave started appearing more in certain Bible translations, reflecting a shift in understanding of how certain Hebrew words, but was still used sparingly in the ASV and RV for specific contexts. Okay. You can't deconstruct a lack of belief. You're constructing a belief in Christianity. Well, I can totally deconstruct atheism. I can completely obliterate atheism into nothing, because atheism is it's a crap position based on nothing. There's no evidence for it, and if atheism were true, it would be it's just so absurd. Like it's literally impossible for atheism to be true. So yeah, I'm deconstructing it into oblivion. Atheism has nothing. Like it's such a fantasy. Like complete Looney Tunes. And I'm trying to help the atheists, deconstruct. They've been lied to. Right now we're studying the Bible and this claim. We're examining this. The atheist deconstruction TikTokers are saying the Bible supports slavery. Every day, the Bible supports slavery. Is that true? Let's deconstruct the deconstructing atheists and see if their claims are true, right? Do you guys criticize the deconstructing atheists, or do you just accept what they say? Their word is bond. You guys think critically? Okay, subsequent Bible revisions, however, made significant changes. The Revised Standard Version of 1952 had a total of 100 occurrences of the term slave in its Old Testament. The new Revised Standard Version of 1989 continued on the same trajectory with a total of 142 occurrences of slave. And 21 of slavery. My cat just attacked me. Okay, so I'm going to plug this into chat. I have to plug this whole book into ChatGPT because I'm not that smart. And I go, hey, ChatGPT, I'm a fool. Explain this to me. And then it helps. It's amazing. Okay, so we got a footnote. Footnote says, for comparative purposes, it is necessary to consider compounds of slave, such as slave girl, as examples of the word slave, since English translations often vary as to whether words are graphically compounded or hyphenated. Thus, the NIV has slave girl and the NRSV has slave-girl. And the JPS 1985 translation has both slave-girl and slave girls. And once again, we're examining the claim that the Bible supports slavery because the deconstruction atheists are so confident that it does. Are they correct? Are they correct? Ironically, its translation of Jeremiah 2:14, and I'm sorry, this is kind of academic and probably boring if you guys, but I kind of like to know these things because I have to deal with these people. Ironically, its translation of Jeremiah 2:14 reads, "Is Israel a slave? Is he a homeborn servant?" Just like the KJV, but with the reversal of the words slave and servant. Interesting. Okay, so he's saying here, in the new Revised Standard Version, they literally switched slave and servant in Jeremiah 2:14. Why would they do that? That's interesting. Showing the extent to which, by the time of translation, slave had come to be associated with the word, and that's a Hebrew word I can't pronounce. I can't even read it. It's written in Hebrew. Even if it was in English, I couldn't pronounce it, so... a completely separate revision of the KJV, namely the New King James Version, in 1982 contained a total of 42 occurrences of the word slave and one of slavery. While this is significantly fewer than the RSV and NRSV, it must be remembered that the New King James Version was a translation that specifically sought to stay close to the KJV, and that the term slave was mainly used to replace archaic expressions in the KJV. The NIV 1984 edition also fits the pattern of late 20th century translations having the root slave 104 times and slavery 17 times in the Old Testament. So basically what's going on here is the KJV didn't have the word slave in it hardly at all. And now all these new translations, recent, more modern translations, slavery is popping off. So why is this happening? And I'm being thorough here. When one is in complete denial, they believe that. I'm not sure what they're referring to. What is that? What is the reference of that? Am I talking about? I'm talking about slavery in the Bible. So the deconstructing atheists are lying to everyone on TikTok and saying that the Bible supports slavery. And it's a bunch of crap, man. Atheists don't believe. Well, what is this? What do you mean atheists don't believe? We're deconstructing atheism. Okay, atheism. Well, atheism really deconstructs itself by its ridiculous claims. So, does God pay my rent? No, he doesn't. Is my argument written out somewhere? I have arguments written out in my notes because I can't remember things. Okay, what a chat GPT is sent telling us, breaking it down for the slow boys like myself. This passage describes how more recent Bible translations started using the word slave much more frequently than older versions like the King James. Okay, breakdown. 1. Increased use of slave. The Revised Standard Version from 1952 used slave 100 times in the Old Testament. And the New Revised Standard Version from 1989, went even further, using slave 142 times and slavery 21 times. These translations show a trend of using slave much more often, reflecting a shift in how translators understood the Hebrew terms that earlier versions had translated as servant. So 2 different wordings for slave compounds. Translators also started using terms like slave girl, or slave-girl, or slave girl, sometimes with a hyphen, sometimes without, to be specific about the type of slavery or servitude described. I don't see what the hyphen means. Different translations made different choices, like the NIV saying slave girl and the NRSV using slave-girl. Irony in Jeremiah 20:14. Although the newer translations use slave more often, some verses still look similar to the original KJV. For example, Jeremiah 20:14. In the newer Jewish Publication Society version, it still uses slave and servant, just reversing their order, which shows how translators had come to link the Hebrew word with slave over time. 4. The New King James Version kept some old phrasing. In 1982, the New King James Version used slave 42 times, which is fewer than the RSV and NRSV. The New King James was meant to stay closer to the original King James language, so it used slave mainly to update old-fashioned expressions rather than fully modernize the text. 5. NIV's usage. The New International Version, particularly its 1984 edition, used slave 104 times and slavery 17 times in the Older Testament, fitting the pattern of 20th century translations that increasingly use the word slave. So, summary, recent Bible translations have used slave much more often than older versions. This shift reflects updated understanding of certain Hebrew words that were once translated as servant, showing a trend toward clearer language about slavery. I don't like how ChatGPT is saying like it's clearer, because just because we're is it necessarily? I think there's like this myth of progress that it's like what's modern is inherently better than what's older. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I don't know. We'll keep we're still early on. We'll keep reading. I'm pretty sure this is going the direction of proving the atheist TikTokers are deceiving. The TikTokers are lying. A welcome guest.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yo, just doing a little studying. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Hey, so I wanted to, is it okay if I ask you a question?
Sure.
When the Bible says that, when the Bible uses like, because I know Christians say that they think God is a father. Now, when they say God is a father figure, do they mean literally, or is it speaking symbolically or figuratively? Like, for example, when it says you are a child of God and God is your father, it means more so in like you are a follower in God's footsteps, or when it says God is your father, is it in a literal sense?
I think it's like both. I think we are, in a sense, we are God's children. He created us in His image to have a loving relationship with Him. So in a sense, we are His children. And then, in another sense, it's also like I think it's metaphorical of or like how a father loves a child.
You're right. So
God's
like,
God's
right. So
love.
right. So like, let's say you were let's say somebody was a part of a cult, right? And the cult leader, right? The cult leader refers to his followers as his children, right? And his followers look up to him as a father figure, right? Now he's not literally their father, and they're not literally his children, but they are in a sense that they follow his footsteps. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they, yeah, so that's like that's what I was like when the Bible uses father and child. Is it like in that sense or in like in the literal sense?
Yeah, I think there's nuance. Like it's not this is not a simple answer. Like I would say in a sense it is literal because He's the creator and He created us in His image and we are His children.
So I kind of like I thought of the angels as plain and clearly being like literally children of God, but like um are the angels literally children of God? Because I kind of I've always thought of them as being like demigods.
I mean they're like I don't know like how to explain. I'm not like a Bible scholar. I would just understand it as like I don't know if we think of the angels as children of God or not. I'm not really sure I can answer that one.
Hmm. So let me ask you this: what does it mean to be in the image of God?
What does it mean? It means it's like what is it like it's an analogy. So when you look at yourself in the mirror, you see a reflection, but that reflection isn't you, but it looks like you. So it's like we resemble God, but we're not God. So we just I don't know. We might have like
Some you
we
said
might have
some similarities.
yeah, we have properties probably similar to God, like God's rational. Humans can be rational, although they often choose not to be.
Would you say that angels have even more of God's similarities?
I don't know.
Mm,
I don't know anything about. I'm not like an angel expert. But I don't know.
gotcha. Yeah. Mm. So I want to get into the you say that it is impossible for somebody to have knowledge, information, or data about the world without the existence of God. Now, when you say that, do you mean the existence of God only, or the existence and the belief in God? So, in order for you to acquire knowledge, information about the world, you have to God not only has to exist, but you have to believe in God also.
No, you don't have to believe in it. Like you don't have to believe in gravity. You could disbelieve in gravity. It doesn't matter. Like gravity's still going to affect you and pull you to the earth, right? So you could disbelieve in God, but because God exists, He's actual, you're still in God's world, and because you're in God's world, you can know things, and you can like do science and learn from your experience. But if atheism were true, which thank God it's not, if it were true, then we couldn't do science. We wouldn't be able to know things. We couldn't even make arguments, or we wouldn't even be able to talk to each other.
Okay, now explain that. You might know things. So you're saying that you wouldn't be able to walk out and see that the sky is blue?
Correct. Because to walk out and see that the sky is blue, there has to be cause and effect relationship.
Okay, now, so like when we look at the sky, right? We see it, and we like the color blue. We gave that a name, right? In Japanese or whatever, it's probably called something different. But we look at it and we gave it a name so that when I say like the sky, we know what the sky is. It's blue. We know what blue is, right? So we gave these things names so
Yeah,
that we can
we did.
accurately.
We sure did. Yep.
So like, okay, let me ask you this: can the truth change?
Can the truth change? No.
Okay, now let me ask you this: is, from what I understand, the definition of truth is that which can be observed and verified as claimed, correct?
Well, no, I would say truth because I'm a Christian. So in Christianity, God is the truth. Jesus is the truth.
Okay, now what does that mean? Like if somebody came and tried to scam you, how would you know whether they are truth or not?
Well, I'd say like truth is that which comports to reality. So God is ultimate reality, and God's a mind, and he thinks correctly about reality, and our minds are made in God's image, so we can think sort of like God. So basically, when our thoughts are aligned with God's thoughts, that's truth. And so if you deny that, you would have no like objective standard for truth, which is why like atheists can't even debate. Like atheism is such a sad position. But the TikTok atheists won't tell you this. They'll act like, no, you can debate as an atheist. You can't. It's nonsense. See what I'm saying? Like, what would be your?
Verified
Oh,
as
you're
claimed?
breaking up.
It is.
But you wouldn't have like an objective standard for truth or value judgments. So whenever an atheist makes a claim about like this is true or this is good or this is bad, those are truth claims and value claims. What's their objective standard for truth? What's their objective standard for value? It's ultimately going to be their own mind. It's just everything in the atheism is based on their opinion. They have no evidence for anything because everything ultimately is just their opinion on what they think is good evidence versus what they think is bad evidence, or their opinion on how they interpret the evidence. So as Christians,
So
we don't interpret evidence ourselves. God interprets the truth. And
okay,
then
okay, now, hang on. Now, do you
we
have
just
a
rethink it. What?
do you have like a direct connection to God's mind? Like, does God like directly communicate truth to you?
Yeah, God can directly communicate truth to us through revelation.
Through revelation, but not like do like telepathy or something like that. Like, do you have access to God's mind?
No. Well, I have access to the mind. I mean, I have access to the mind of Christ, right? So we can know the mind of Christ, and that's like God. So, like, I do, yeah, in a way, through Christ, yeah. We have access to his revelation. He reveals. So if God, the only way we can know God is through God, what he reveals. There's no other way to know God. Because our human reasoning and observation couldn't know anything about God just with those things.
Okay, so now if all you can know about the world is based upon what God reveals to you, how then do you know that science is true if God has not given us a science book like how He has given us the Bible?
Oh well, so because because like God designs the world and God designs my mind and how I think and he designs my senses, because he designed all these things to be accurate, I can like trust my reasoning and I can trust my senses. And that's going to be necessary like to do science, right? That we can accurate our mind and our senses are accurately representing a real external world. And so if you deny that design, well, now your mind is just the product ultimately of an accident. Your senses are the result of what evolution? Well, evolution selects for survivability. Evolution doesn't select for accuracy or truth. It could be that inaccurate sense data helped us survive better. And so on a system where all we have is like evolution and some accident creating life in the universe, there's your thinking is accidental. You can't trust your thinking, and there's no reason to think your sense data is accurate. Only if we're designed and intended for our environment, for the world, could we trust our senses, could we trust our thinking. So God's required to be like a justification to think, to do like science or philosophy. It's impossible otherwise.
Okay, now let me ask you this. In your worldview, in the Christian God worldview, is it the case that our senses are equipped to fully accurately
Not fully accurately, but I would say they're reliable. They are accurate. They're not, because there's a, people can be see something that's not there, hear something they think, and
yeah, people
can
have
make
schizophrenia and
mistakes.
stuff like that.
You can make mistakes, but they're reliable enough to like do science.
Now, is it like, because we know that like there's certain spectrums of light that we can't see, right? We know that certain other creatures can see things that we can't see, right? We know that certain people are born with certain mental and personality defects and things like that. How would you explain? Let me hang on. So in your world, the world exemplifies intentionality and design. So how would you be able to tell if the world didn't exemplify intention or design?
Yeah, we would just assume. So we can assume. I would just say like, okay, let's say like hypothetically, there's no design. What would happen? And it would lead to an absurdity, because we see connections all over the place. We see patterns. Like you brought up the color blue. So blue is a type of pattern where we see like there's multiple things that exist that are blue. So that's a pattern in the world. Okay. And without like there being like a mind that's like purposing that pattern, that's intending for like, okay, this thing is going to be blue and this thing's going to be blue, and there's this inherent connection between these two objects that they're both blue. That's a type of a connection or a pattern. And without like purpose behind the patterns would be like random, they'd be accidental. But why would there be patterns if everything was like random and accidental? The fact that we experience all these patterns shows that there is a God purposing for there to be those patterns, because otherwise it's just going to be you'd say all these patterns are accidental. That's not reasonable.
And what do you think about how like when we observe space, right? Life seems to be rare in our from what we the technology that we have. It seems clearly that it takes a lot.
Some randomness, but there's also there's consistency and there's randomness. There's both.
Right. So how do you how do I put this? How do you explain the chaos in our reality? As a matter of fact, some people would say that there's more chaos than order.
I mean, I don't know why I'd have to explain that. So it'd just be like through God's like divine providence, he imposes that there's going to be like regularity along with irregularity in the world. So it makes sense why there's order in the world. I don't think we have to explain the irregularity. Like that, I don't see why that would. Randomness doesn't really need to be explained. We just have to explain like these patterns that we see, because it doesn't make sense to say these patterns are random. How can you have random patterns? The patterns that we see indicate the categories, classes, kinds of things. Those are the patterns that indicates there's a purpose. There's something in it's called an inherent connection versus there's either inherent connections or there's not inherent connections. If there's no purpose, there's no inherent connections. But we see inherent connections. We talk about inherent connections because that's what patterns are, inherent connections. So you can't deny that there's intention because you're denying the patterns that you experience, those inherent connections. There's no inherent anything without intention. To have inherent meaning, inherent connections, there has to, like, if an author writes a story, the story has an inherent meaning because the author intends it to have that meaning. If an author just writes a random story and he doesn't intend for there to be any meaning, there's no like inherent meaning in the story. Then you can interpret the story could mean anything. And so, but we don't talk about the world as if the world can just be anything. We talk about the world as if there's like an inherent meaning in the world, an objective truth you and me both share. If there's no inherent meaning in the world, then it's like how do we determine if when we disagree, we can just interpret the world. I can interpret my reality, you interpret your reality, and there's no objective standard to say like who's right or wrong. There's only objective standards if there's like a God. Experience only makes sense, can be explained. What we experience can only be explained if there's purpose and intention. So like everything points towards God. All evidence, everything we experience points towards God. Nothing indicates atheism. In fact, atheism, when we try to think about, oh, what would the world be like if there was no God? It's like it's chaos. It's nuts. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely, everything is random.
What would you say? So that thing of when you talk about intention and purpose, I would say
Yeah.
that purpose, that like we as humans living this life, we ascribe purpose is, it doesn't seem like there is some sort of inherent purpose. It more so seems like
You're wrong.
purpose is what we give ourselves. That's what I
You're
think.
not understanding what I mean by purpose. I'm not talking about like, oh, like why did you wake up today, right? I'm not saying like that. I'm saying when you see patterns in the world, right? You see there's things that multiple things are blue. That's a pattern. If it's either that the pattern is purposed to be that pattern or the pattern is random. Well, does it make sense for there to be a random pattern? How does that make sense? Patterns aren't random, are they?
No.
They're purposeful. Exactly. So we experience purpose in the world when we see patterns. That's purpose. It's the same thing.
Now, what if it's the case that another creature doesn't see the blue that we
Patterns
see?
can be random. What?
So what if it's the case that another creature sees, like when they look at the sky, they don't see the blue that we see. They see something else.
Well, I mean, that's just one example though. That's just a category. So like it's any pattern. So they still see patterns. There's nothing that exists that doesn't see patterns or all animals react to patterns in their environment.
Now, but hang on. If it is objective, wouldn't that mean that every observer would have to see the same patterns.
No, it just means for there to be an objective truth, we just need like a mind that's independent of humans that can evaluate and interpret facts, and then so we could have objective knowledge. So we need the mind of God, an objective source outside of the human mind, for which that's the only way there could be objective knowledge.
Yeah, so like, because like if I look at the sky, right, and it's blue from my point of view, but from a dog's point of view is something else, and from another thing's point of view is something else, that would mean that that truth would
Color's
be.
not objective. Color's not objective. Color is like an opinion. So that's not a good example, because you're talking about like a subjective truth.
But okay, but color is indeed, there is no objective way of verifying the color of anything, right?
Right, color is subjective.
So if that is one thing that exists, that is
You're
indeed.
laughing at me because I said color is an opinion. They don't even know.
So if that is the case, that something does exist that you and me agree is indeed subjective, what else? What determines what is indeed subjective and objective?
Whether it's an opinion of a person or whether it's a fact of a matter in the world, regardless of opinion.
So you're saying that it is a fact of the matter that there is no universal, or at least that
Colors don't exist in the world. Our mind imposes colors on things.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Would you say that our mind also imposes certain meanings and purposes and values on things too?
Well, you can go that route and then your whole life is a fantasy, or you can be a Christian and there's like actual truth, there's actual like value that exists in the world. So basically, have you seen the movie with the Matrix?
Oh yeah, with Neo, yep.
Okay, so it's like I'm like Morpheus and you're Neo, and I'm like trying to wake you up out of atheism, right? And it's like you can take the blue pill, go back to sleep, and like wake up tomorrow and you live your atheist fantasy life that's not real. Or you can take the red pill, believe the Bible, and enter the real world. And that's the choice you're with right now. Because
Are preferences objective or subjective?
only Christians are in reality. If you're not a Christian, you're in your life is a fantasy.
Are preferences objective or subjective?
Well, it depends. It could be both. Because if I could create a subjective purpose for myself, but there's also like a higher power, God, who gives meaning to the universe itself, and there is an objective purpose through God.
And what is that objective purpose for people?
The purpose of the meaning of life. So basically, God's love, and love is the most foundational, fundamental thing in reality. So the purpose of we're created in the image of God, being love, to love God and to love each other. So the whole point of meaning of life is to spread love in the world. That's what Christianity is about. So it's really weird people are against it so much. It's almost like they hate the truth or something, and they don't care about evidence and logic. They just want to hate Jesus. Isn't that weird? Why would you hate like why would you want to stop a religion that's literally about just loving God and loving other people and forgiving and feeding the poor, living a life of service to others, like being humble. Like, it's so weird. Yeah.
So how? So you as a Christian, how do you make sense out of the supernatural, like demonic possession? You know, the alternate dimensions and things like that. How do you make sense out of that?
I mean, I don't have to. The Bible does. The Bible explains that stuff. And all we can know is what the Bible tells us. Although there is evidence of the supernatural. Like, there's a case in Gary, Indiana, where children were possessed by like a demon, and hospital staff and police witnessed this stuff. And so there's really no reason for the police or the hospital staff to lie. We have this in the police report. There a psychiatrist, doctor, a nurse, and a CPS worker witnessed this boy walk backwards up the wall and on the ceiling as if there was no gravity. And so I don't know how you explain that in naturalism, but good luck. Good luck on that one.
Would you
No, it doesn't prove Christianity. It proves there's demons, right? So I don't know. I don't know how do atheists explain the demonic phenomena that is experienced and all the evidence of that. I wonder how they explain that.
why is it that we don't observe creation here and now? Like why is it that like when we look in the universe, it doesn't seem as if we are in somebody's mind? Like why don't we observe things coming into existence as if they're coming from pure thought?
Someone asked for the name of the case. If you do a Google search, demonic possession, Gary, Indiana, it should come up. TMZ published the police report on the incidents, and it goes over all the facts that I just talked about. Sorry, what was your question again? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
So I wanted to ask, why don't we observe creation happening anywhere? Like, why is it that when we observe the universe, it doesn't seem as if like we're in somebody's mind? Like, you know, like things are just popping out from like out of pure thought, out of nowhere, like as if we're in somebody's mind, a being's mind. Why is it that we don't observe creation here now in our current day?
Well, because it happened. It's already happened. Creation is over. God created. Now we're in the creation.
But why wouldn't God show us that things can be created?
We only know what God reveals to us. I don't know why you would expect God to do this for you, because God doesn't reveal that He would do that.
It would show us that things can be created, and it would visibly, observably show us that we could possibly be in somebody's mind.
God said that you already have Abraham and Moses, and if that's not good enough for you, like no evidence is gonna convince you. So it doesn't matter. You either accept God or you don't. And I don't know why you wouldn't, because it's completely irrational to not accept God.
Well, this is what I would say that when it comes to accepting the Christian worldview, it's not as simple as like it's not just like some sort of spiritualism where you accept the existence of a higher power. You have to also accept the existence of a whole bunch of other stuff that goes with it. It's not just like, oh, I believe in a higher power and that's it. No, you have to accept a whole bunch of other stuff, the devil, all that other stuff that goes with it.
So what? So what? Yeah, you accept everything the Bible says. Yeah, it's awesome. What's wrong with that? The Bible's lit. It's like the best story ever, most peer-reviewed book. I don't know. We're kind of going nowhere here, I guess. But I'm gonna move on, unless you got something else. Not to be rude or anything. Thanks for coming, man. I wish you well. But I'm not convinced atheism is true. Sorry. Just not convinced. Seems highly ridiculous. Don't know how people believe it. But hey, you're free to believe what you want. There's people that think the Earth is flat. So what I actually think atheism is crazier than flat Earth because flat Earth like is possibly true. Atheism isn't possible. Well, I mean, I guess flat Earth is it's not metaphysically possible, but it's like logically possible. Atheism isn't even logically possible. That's what I'm saying. What do you mean atheism isn't impossible? How the hell would how would atheism be possible? How could you possibly think? I mean, it's a complete contradiction. Welcome.
Hey, is your name Mars?
Yes.
Awesome, Mars. Were your parents Christian?
Yeah, they're Catholic.
Interesting. So, I'm not going to disagree with you that the likelihood of us having a spiritual experience seems more reasonable when you get into actually experiencing life. That being said, it's very I don't know, like presumptive that if there is a spiritual experience happening, it would be specifically Christianity, right? Like the likelihood that your parents had the one true religion out of all the religions that have come across the human mind, just the logic and the reasoning in that statistic is just almost impossibly low.
Christianity is a low probability?
Yeah. If you were to just do the math on the probabilities of like how true each religion would be and like cross-reference them, like putting your hat as far as like logic at the helm with Christianity is not, those two things are not in alignment.
Well,
Yeah.
no. Because we now know Christianity is true because we can objectively prove it with the transcendental argument for God. So
Go ahead and tell me your transcendental argument for God.
yeah, I just argue that God's like necessary to even make an argument at all. Because to make an argument, identity over time has to be true, or we couldn't argue it. And
Sure. I mean, there's an assumption. Yeah. I mean, the singularity, I don't see there's any evidence for there being a singularity. There's definitely a lot of evidence for there being multiplicities. And again, when you say
so
God, like God can be real. Like,
when you say singularity, are you talking about my love life?
oh gosh, no, so sorry, Mars. No, like the likelihood of monotheism being true versus like polytheism, if you're paying attention, that also just is a lot less likely. But like I'll ride with you for a second. So monotheism exists and there's one God. Why would it be the Christian God?
Because so like going back to the transcendental argument. Okay, so like if we lived in a world where there's no consistency and like imagine like the apple could just change into an orange or then the orange could like turn into a cell phone or what, like everything was just changing all the time. You couldn't make like an argument in that world, right? Because it's like your words, how would your words even refer to anything in the world if everything's constantly changing? So there has to be this like consistency. It's like called identity over time. And so we need something to like basically impose and secure that things don't change. And we need a way to like know that is true. So what we need is the only way to know God is if God takes the initiative and go tell us about himself. Because we can't, with our reason and our observations, we can't reason to God. So God has to do it himself, tell us about him. And this is what we have in Christianity is this God that tells him about himself. And that's the God that like makes the world consistent. And to deny that, then you wouldn't be able to explain or like justify why there's this like consistency that's needed to even make an argument. And so we say, if you even argue at all in the first place, Christianity has to be true.
Well, again, you're speaking to like an algorithm, right? And you're speaking to organization, but organization doesn't allude to Christianity. And I agree with you. Organization is very present, and anybody that denies organization is not paying attention. I would also argue that randomness exists. And if the two do coexist, it refers to organization being top down, not bottom up, which is polytheism versus monotheism. Because if there are small amounts, even, if they're super rare in form of inconsistency, that would allude to a multiplicity of influences. Does that?
Well, yeah, I know there's there's regularity along with irregularity, but you have to explain the regularity. We only can if God reveals himself.
Yeah.
But the only
I
where God reveals himself and he reveals himself with all the perfect attributes that are needed is the Christian religion.
Oh no, the other religions describe God really beautifully and describe the organization really well.
But they don't have revelation. It's only in Christianity.
It's a much darker view of. Sorry, what?
Well, we broke up. I don't know.
It's only Christians, is that what you said?
Well, yeah, the only Christians really have, Jews and Islam, there's revelation there too, but only Christians reveal the God with the perfect attributes that's necessary. So that's how we know Christianity is true. Because that's the only way we can know God.
I would actually argue that's a point against your argument, because if God is, as you say in Christianity, all powerful, all knowing, omnipotent, perfect in expression, we wouldn't have all of the atrocities, right? And the Bible wouldn't condone things like slavery. If there is a Christian God, there's an acceptance that the God is not perfect.
No. So if God purposes the world that the world can't know God, would we be able to know God?
If God purposes the world, what was the next thing you said? I'm sorry.
If God purposes the world that the world not know God, then it's just going to follow that no one would know God, right?
Okay. I don't know. I don't know if it's relevant. You agree that there's suffering here, right? There's suffering on the planet.
Yeah, the point there is suffering, but the point I was trying to make is that's not inconsistent with what God reveals about himself in the Bible. So
he reveals his imperfect form.
It's not imperfect. The suffering is a result of his plan for redemption, where he temporarily allows unpleasant things to happen, so we learn not to love the world and to turn to God and love God.
Okay. Do you know about Buddhism? Or we can talk about any religion. I'm pretty affluent in a lot of them. Do you know what the theory of Buddhism is?
Not really. I just know it's an atheist.
It's not atheist, so it's not. But the concept of God is a little bit more abstract, and I think in modern day language, algorithm is probably a little bit of a more poignant word that they would use, but it's very similar to what you just said, in that it centers redemptive qualities, and the idea is that you are supposed to sort of purge out and pay out your darkness within the flesh, which is not very far from Christian ideology.
Okay, but they don't believe in a creator-creature distinction, which means it's atheist.
Creator. Okay, so you need the creator to be a creature, is what you're saying.
To be a theist, you believe in the creator-creature distinction, and if you don't believe in the creator-creature distinction, then you're an atheist. So Buddhists are technically atheists.
Ooh, creature is such a specific. So you're saying to be a Christian, you need to believe that the algorithm has a personality? Is that what you're saying?
A theist is someone who believes in the creator-creature distinction, that we are we're creatures created by God. Buddhism doesn't teach that. So it's technically atheism. Atheism is when you don't believe there's a creator-creature distinction. That's atheism. So Buddhism doesn't believe that.
Right, but Buddhism in like in the act of your life and in following it is very similar. So like again, that argument for Christianity being the one true religion out of all the religions that humans have come up with, especially because when you're looking at an ideology, you never just take it in a vacuum, right? You take the ideology and then you take the expressions of the ideology within the human form and the compilations of the institutions that surround it in order to get a better grasp of what this ideology really means and how it really exists within us in life. And obviously, and I'm really not trying to say this to be like triggering and controversial, but there have been more violent deaths and more suffering on the planet because of Abrahamic ideologies, which is this creature creation distinction you're saying.
That's a lie. That's a lie. Why are you lying?
I'm not lying. It's just
a lie.
it's historical fact.
That's not a historical. Why are you lying? How many history books have you read?
A lot. I didn't grow up in the United States, so I learned about history all over the world instead of just the American history.
What you're saying is grossly inaccurate.
It's not inaccurate.
Atheism is like led to the most unaliving of people, and it's not even close. It's ridiculous.
That's not true. Atheism does cause suffering. I can agree with you that. Dude, I'm not lying. It's history. It's history.
No, all the big mass unalivers in the world, they're all atheists.
That's not true, babes.
It is true. You don't know what you're talking about. It's not even close.
The big H to the I to the T to the L to the E to the R. Okay, that's Abrahamic religion. If you study anything with English,
no, he was going to destroy the churches after he won the war. He was an occultist.
Judaism is Abrahamic religion.
And he went after that.
I'm speaking. I'm not just being specific to Christianity because I'm really. This is not like I'm not trying to attack you. This is Christianity. This is Judaism. This is Islam. This is anything under the Abrahamic law. So, before Abrahamic law and other religions surrounding Abrahamic law, there wasn't a foundational belief that the thing around you, like the environment around you, the animals, the plants, you were a part of that puzzle. That was like the general anthropology that people understood, like, okay, we're a part of this system. And obviously Abrahamic religion seeded a completely different conception of what was going on. And that's no, the system is for you. You're not a part of the system. It was built specifically for you. And that's, a lot of the foundational reasoning behind, as you say, mass unalivings. And I'm probably not talking as modern as you think. I'm thinking back to Queen Bloody Mary, even of England. A lot of the monarchs, the mass killings were in the name of God, in the name of Christianity.
No. Those were politically motivated, and look at.
Have you studied the monarchs? No, seriously, have you studied Queen Mary? Have you? Because that's not true.
They weren't okay. So you don't know what you're talking about. The Bible. What did Jesus say? When they wanted to stone the adulterous woman, he said, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Right? Christianity is against what you're speaking about. You're completely clueless. You're talking about evil politicians who are using like religion as an excuse for evil. But the Bible also talks about that. The Bible says there are people that claim to know me and I don't know them. So the Bible even accounts for people misusing the name of Christ to do evil. So that's expected on the Christian worldview. Okay, those are people that are Christian in name only. They're not living a life, a Christian life. The people that you're talking about.
I guess, but in Leviticus 25, right, as for the male and female slaves you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire these male and female slaves. You may also acquire them from aliens residing with you or from their families who are with you or born near your land. They may be your property. You may keep them as possession for your children. After that, you may inherit them as property. You may treat them as slaves, but as far as your fellow Israelites, no one shall rule over the other with harshness. So this is slavery specific to, this is nationalism. This is saying if somebody is a foreigner, you have the right to possess them as a slave. Isn't that condoning of like pretty awful behavior?
Do you think so? Well, you're kind of cherry picking something out of context there.
I'm not. How could you cherry pick slavery? What context is slavery appropriate?
looking for a verse. Give me a second.
Okay.
God, I can't. My computer's like.
I'll give you. I'm on the rush. I don't. Because context is often what's the reply in this, but I just don't think that there's any context that's appropriate for condoning slavery, especially within the specification because they're not from the land that you're from.
Yeah, well, it's because you're ignorant about what you're reading. You're being lied to by TikTok atheists.
I would love for you to educate me. Please tell me what I'm being lied to about.
Leviticus 19, 33 through 34.
Okay.
When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. Do you think slavery is mistreating people?
It definitely is mistreating people.
Ooh, that's a problem for you because here it says don't mistreat people, foreigners. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as you love yourself. For you were foreigners in Egypt. In Egypt, they were treated badly by slave masters. And it's saying not to do that here.
Okay, so in the same,
Oh my
so
God.
Leviticus 19 and Leviticus 25 are specifically like contradict. Why are you saying, I haven't even said anything yet. Why are you saying no?
Because I just showed that you don't know what you're talking about.
Just because the Bible has two contradictory passages, one of them says you may possess and own slaves that are foreign to you, and then one that says you may treat foreigners as well, doesn't prove your point. It just proves that the Bible has contradictions in it.
Okay, so what's more likely, that the Bible is contradicting itself or that you're a stupid asshole?
That the Bible is contradicting itself because there's never been a word of God. There's
No.
only ever been a word of man.
Oh, you're a stupid asshole.
You think that calling me names is making your argument seem more intelligent? You think calling me a stupid asshole is making me seem more intelligent?
Let's think about this probabilistically. The author of Leviticus is so stupid that he contradicted himself, or you're just a hateful, stupid asshole. What's more probable?
What about what I've said today, Mars, has been hateful? Please tell me.
Well, you're telling me the Bible supports something that it doesn't. So I'm.
Do you want another passage about slavery? Because there's plenty more than Leviticus 25 about slavery. I can give you Exodus. Do you want Exodus on slavery?
Yeah, I can do it. Let's do Exodus 21:16.
Exodus 21. When you buy a Hebrew male slave, he shall serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th he will go free without debt. If he comes to be single, blah, 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 blah. Even 7 years, even a day of slavery is, obviously incredibly wrong.
Exodus 21:16. Anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to unalive, whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. So how do you have slavery if you can't kidnap people? Can you explain that to me?
It sounds like your Bible has contradictions in it.
Oh, does the Bible have contradictions, or are you a stupid asshole?
I know that I'm not a stupid asshole. I think it's really cute and adorable that you keep calling me that because you don't have an actual argument. Men have
what you're
written
doing is
books with contradictions since the beginning of time. Men have written books with contradictions. In fact, I think it'd be almost impossible for you not to find a book without contradictions.
What you're doing is it's called poisoning the well, which is a fallacy, and I think it's just a symptom of your hate.
Girl, just because you know the word fallacy doesn't mean you have an argument. There are so many passages in the Bible that condone slavery. Why would you want to choose a book that condones slavery as the thing that you're following for morality? Why would that be your choice?
I think you're too low information, and you think you're arrogant, like you think you know everything. So I think I'm just going to move on.
I don't know everything, but I think the confidence to say that your religion over all religions is true, there's no foundation for that. And the being mean to other people about it also doesn't make any sense. Like if you're a real truth seeker, you'd come with openness and you'd want to continue to evolve and learn what could possibly be going on. Because it's quite a mystery, isn't it? What we're experiencing here and all that we're going through. Like, it's very intriguing. It kind of becomes a lot less fun if you just say, like, I know what's happening and you're wrong, and everyone who doesn't think, that there's a Christian God is whatever you called me, an ignorant asshole.
Yeah, you're ignorantly you're judging an ancient culture without knowledge. You're being a bigot because you're judging this ancient culture. And you have no idea anything about. You've never done any research other than read one Bible verse, and you even
There's
taking it out
nothing
of
about
context.
time that makes slavery or
Are you not
culture
embarrassed? Are you not embarrassed or ashamed for
not
this
even
type
a
of
little
behavior?
bit
That's
embarrassed,
crazy.
babes. There's
Wow, that's
nothing
crazy.
about
I would
slavery
be
that you
really
can put into
embarrassed
context to make appropriate.
because it's like
What you're
I'm getting a violation for this harassment. Why am I harassing?
I didn't report you if you're asking me that at all. I did not report you.
I guess they don't like it when I say like you're being ignorant. They want me to just let you be ignorant and not tell you. But I think like I'm trying to do you a solid by telling you you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because otherwise now you're gonna just go around being ignorant, and I'm trying to help you so you don't have to say ignorant things. But whatever.
Yeah, I've been
You're an
open to
arrogant
your
person.
education, but you haven't taught me anything today, that you've brought me no news, and you've just said that parts of the Bible that I've read somehow contradict other parts, which doesn't prove your point. It actually disproves your point that this would be the one true word of God. There's also, obviously, you talked about the Bible doesn't condone unalivings. There's mass unalivings in the Bible. God himself did mass unalivings, as you stated at the beginning of this call. So,
Well,
yeah,
thanks for the hate. I appreciate it.
there was there was no hate to you. There was no
Sure.
hate.
Okay. Yeah. In your mind, according to you. Thank you. I wish
You're,
you well. What a hateful person. Well, anyways, I guess I got a warning for bullying because they were telling me they were poisoning the well and saying untrue things about my Bible, and I said that they were being, a stupid jerk for doing that. Apparently, I'm supposed to just let people lie about the Bible, or else I'm harassing them. I don't understand this TikTok stuff, but play the victim. Well, what did I do? She was saying things that were untrue, and I brought up verses to show where she's wrong. And she goes, "Oh, well, that just means the Bible contradicts." Well, does the Bible contradict, or are you just being hateful? I mean, obviously she's being hateful, but I'm supposed to sit here and let her hate on my Bible, and I can't call her a stupid jerk for doing that, apparently, because I'm being mean and harassing her. Are you kidding me? Why is it okay for her to ignorantly lie about my Bible? I don't get it. Anyways, I guess I have to restart the live because of the warning. So there you go.